Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Views and News and I'm Faisal Rehman live from our Islamabad studios. Today we'll be talking about the expected content of the Prime Minister's speech that is going to be around 1 a.m. and this is on the 76th UNGA session. Now, Prime Minister is virtually going to address this particular session, and the major focus which everybody is expecting will be around the Afghan issue, about the Afghan future, about the overall planning of the Western world as far as the overall stability is concerned, and also the kind of input that is required by the regional countries and in particular by Pakistan. Earlier even Mr. Blinken said that Pakistan has played a very important role in the overall situation. Now it depends that how the Taliban act upon the promises. That is going to be the benchmark for the future course of action. Number one. Second is going to be about the overall Kashmir issue. As we all know that in Kashmir, the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, the atrocities, they have multiplied. The way their forces, they are torching the houses of the people who support this indigenous cause of independence. The way these youngsters are kidnapped and tortured by the law enforcement agencies of India. Forget about what has happened because of the extensive use of these pellet guns. How many youngsters and people, including women, children, and school-going boys and girls, they have been blinded. You talk about the kidnapping and later on extrajudicial killing of those. Now that has also become another major issue. Primarily the focus would be around the humanitarian crisis out there. Now before I introduce you to our panelists, I'll quickly take you to a package that has been prepared by our production team that will tell you about the overall content of our today's show. Let's watch it.
Under the leadership of Prime Minister Imran Khan, Pakistan's foreign policy's astuteness touched new heights. Pakistan's difficult yet bold decisions on one hand challenged the existing world order and on the other hand amplified its multilateral tilts and respective approaches in the international arena. The chaotic exit of the US and Pakistan's resilient stand on not being a partner in conflict with the US and Afghanistan has cemented Pakistan's strategic position in South Asia. Pakistan's shift in foreign policy makes it a core entity and stakeholder in the Eurasian dream of Russia and China. The declining position of the existing hegemon in South Asia has also weakened the Indian dream of being in the position of the net security provider of South Asia. These successes of Pakistan on strategic fronts have brought a ray of hope and confidence in the foreign policy directions regarding wrapping up and solving the pending disputes concerning Pakistan, specifically the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir issue, as well as Afghanistan. Pakistan's permanent representative at the UN, Munir Akram, told that the speech of Prime Minister Imran Khan in the 76th annual session of the United Nations will outline the country's perspective on key regional and global issues, especially on Kashmir and the situation in Afghanistan. Moreover, Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Qureshi raised the Kashmir issue in the sideline meetings of the annual session of the United Nations General Assembly with the OIC contact group on Kashmir and urged the Organization of Islamic Cooperation to enhance its efforts for a lasting solution to the dispute while talking to the OIC contact group on Kashmir. He emphasized that to ensure peace in South Asia, a just and equitable resolution to the Jammu and Kashmir dispute is mandatory. The foreign minister reminded the group that the oppressed Kashmiri people were now heavily reliant on the OIC and the Muslim Ummah. OIC's Secretary General Yusuf Al Uthaymeen, who chaired the meeting, assured to play its role in resolving the dispute.
Now, let me quickly introduce you to our panelists. We have with us in our studio on my right is Syed Muhammad Ali, Director, Strategic Affairs, CASS. Thank you so much, Ali, for your time. And we also have with us Lieutenant General retired NAEEM KHALID Lodi Saab, former Defence Minister, former Defence Secretary. General Saab, pleasure to have you in the show, sir. Thank you so much for your time. And we also have with us ZAHIR Shah Saab. He's a Senior Journalist and Resident Editor, Bowl Media. Thank you so much, ZAHIR Saab, for your time as well. And we'll also try to talk to ASIM IFTIKHAR Ahmed Saab, the spokesperson of the Foreign Office, so that we can also get the update regarding the Prime Minister's address to the 76th UNGA session. But if you allow me, Ali, let's start off from General NAEEM. General Saab, if I may ask you that primarily the Prime Minister, when he visited the UNGA last time, The major, in fact, focus was primarily on the Kashmir issue. It was about Islamophobia, if you remember. It was about climate change and the overall situation that was developing around Pakistan. Even Afghanistan was also discussed. Now, this year, it is generally believed that two major areas of discussion would be one, Afghanistan, number two, Kashmir. Now, what sort of points do you think that Pakistan needs to raise in the 76th UNGA session, sir, so that the world could hear what exactly we are up to? Your take, sir.
I think in your opening package, fair assessment has been made that what all he's likely to say. Besides these two your topics which you have mentioned, I think he will also talk about environment, because that is a very popular topic nowadays in UN, and also COVID, and how we have dealt with it and how we are expecting that the others should also help each other and all that. So basically, let's first talk about Kashmir. I think the major difference would be this new dossier that we have created, because this time we have prosecutable evidence. Earlier we had, indicated events and things happening which were well known to everyone, but we could not pinpoint that who is actually perpetrating all that. We did not have any names, but this time we have names, we have ranks, we have days, we have all the corroborating evidence. So that makes it a very prosecutable evidence. And I think this time this will be presented with more emphasis and continue. And I think with the passage of time, world has also become much more aware as compared to last year or last to last year, what all has been happening in Kashmir. So probably this is one. As far as Afghanistan is concerned, I think our stance will be reiterated, which we are saying, no, we know that our earlier stance that we have no favorites and Afghan-led, Afghan-owned, now that has been overtaken by events. And now what we are saying and what a slight difference what the world is saying, we also, share with the world that Afghanistan must have an inclusive government. They must look after the rights of, women and minorities, and they must not allow their space to be used for terrorism and all that. There's no, I mean, it is right in consonance with what the world is saying. But there's a slight difference. What we are saying is that to enable the Afghan government to fulfill their promises, we need to support them. Because they are facing, crunch, cash crunch, they are facing food crunch and all those things, and this is known to everybody. So there are certain things which can be easily discernible and immediately can be done. For example, they have, given amnesty to people. They are not doing things with high-handedness, and there's a general peace in the country. But as far as such things, for example, not allowing their land to be used by extremists, and then looking after the women, looking after the minorities. No, these are policies. It is going to take some time. So Pakistan says that let us start helping them first and enable them to do all these things. And the world is saying no. A portion of the world, I would say, not the world. A portion of the world is saying no, we will wait for them to first fulfill their promises, whereas some of the promises are long-term or mid-term promises. So I think he will emphasize that we need to straight away start helping them. And probably he would suggest that we should give them financial help and help in medical help and food and all that. So this is overall what I think he will encapsulate as far as this thing is concerned. He's going to talk tonight.
All right, sir. Coming to you now, Ali, Primary General Sahab was saying that major issues would be around Kashmir, Afghanistan, perhaps COVID-19 and environment. I mean, that is again something very important. Islamophobia could again be touched upon as well, like the last time. But sir, promises should be fulfilled first or support should be given first. Now, that is another very interesting balance to see. I believe that the Taliban, whatever they have done so far, whatever sort of perceptions are always created by the West, as we all know. But as far as the human rights is concerned, I think they have done a brilliant job there. Yes, there could be an incident or perhaps two somewhere around the entire country, but generally speaking, the way they have behaved so far, I think this gives a lot of legitimacy for the national cause of the Taliban government and also for the future course of action. Your take, sir.
Absolutely. I think I agree with Jan Sahab and your own comments that I think gradually their Afghan Taliban's ability to address and respond to the international community's concerns is improving, and they are very sensitive to their international image, and they're conscious of the need to gain international diplomatic recognition and political legitimacy, which will allow them to improve their ability to govern better, to deliver, and also to sustain and vindicate their narrative and ideology. But besides that, I'll briefly present to you a framework which will allow us to have a comprehensive perspective on this very important UNGA event. I think there are two dimensions of the annual UNGA conference. First is the diplomatic aspect, the second is the substantive aspect. In terms of diplomacy, there are three aspects which are very important, and I want to share for the benefit of your viewers. Number one, they must remember that this is UN is the most important forum for multilateral diplomacy in the world. So when the Prime Minister of Pakistan presents Pakistan's perspective, Pakistan's interests, Pakistan's concerns, Pakistan's expectations, then the entire 193 nation world is the audience. So this is an exceptional event beyond the bilateral negotiations and diplomacy that we carry out. The second aspect is you are aware that our foreign minister is also in New York and has held number of meetings with his counterparts, including the US Secretary of State Mr. Blinken yesterday. He met other people as well, and he is trying to reinforce the narrative which our Prime Minister is expected to articulate tonight by engaging the important players at a bilateral level on the sidelines. So this event is also very important, which it allows the foreign ministers and leadership to meet on the sidelines and engage on substantive aspects. The third aspect is equally important, and that is that Kashmiris and those people who are concerned about the poor human rights situation in India and really worried about the human rights atrocities carried out by the Indian oppressors and forces inside Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, they are right now as we speak carrying out protests outside the UN. So there are three dimensions to this a worldwide event, not just the international community engaging with itself, secondly the sideline diplomacy, and the third is the protests of all those people who are concerned and disturbed and victims of the Indian atrocities and human rights violations. They are also reinforcing these voices inside the UNGA, outside the UN halls. Now coming to the substance part. The substance, as you rightly pointed out, are going to be also categorized in three categories. First, the global issues. First, I think the most important thing which I am sure the Prime Minister will politely articulate is the concern of the developing world in general and the Muslim world in particular, that the premier multilateral diplomatic forum of United Nations Security Council has failed to fulfill its obligation towards the people of Kashmir and the people of Palestine in resolving the issue and implementing the resolutions passed under that forum.
Correct.
That is the first thing. The second is the major powers who are the permanent members of Security Council have also failed in their collective responsibility to address the huge COVID crisis and develop a sort of a health initiative at the global level. The third is the humanitarian issues in number of countries, particularly Afghanistan, in Yemen, in Syria, in Libya, wherever there has been unilateral intervention by any major power or superpower, the United Nations and particularly the Security Council has failed to prevent and dissuade unilateral intervention. And lastly, what I am expecting the Prime Minister to reinforce is the imperative of the international community to help the Afghan people unfreeze their own money so that whoever is in power is able to translate that money into timely relief, so that the people are the tragedy and the turmoil of the Afghan people is reduced, and the consequences of their problems do not spill into other neighboring countries.
Because the most important concern, Ali, I would say, is if the same situation continues,
Yes.
if there is no aid available to the Afghan people, to
Yes.
the people, the food security is an issue. Health again is going to be a major issue because most of these NGOs, they have left Afghanistan.
Absolutely.
And on top of that, I would say you talk about, forget about the education for the time being. Women rights, in fact, is another very important area of discussion, because the entire globe is actually looking at the Afghan Taliban through one lens, and that is about the women rights. Yes, they are doing whatever they can do within the given capacity, but a lot more is expected, and expected too soon. Like Blinken said, that we'll see first and then we'll take the action. Let's see how long will they observe the situation, because the more delay, the more problems will arise.
Just a brief comment. I think this disproportionate emphasis on women right is understandable, but not logical. Because, you know, when you talk about women rights, if whoever is in power is not allowed access to the sovereign funds, the $9 billion worth of frozen money at the helm of IMF, World Bank and the US, if that is not allowed, not released, then anybody's rights cannot be taken care of, including the women.
All right, so let's see how we proceed forward. But right now we have been joined in by ASIM IFTIKHAR Ahmed Saab, spokesperson of the Foreign Office. Asim Saab, Assalamu Alaikum ji, and thank you so much for taking out your very precious time and talking to PTV World. Asim Saab, first of all, a very straightforward question, that is about the agenda of the Prime Minister as far as his speech is concerned on the 76th session of the UNGA. Your take, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. As you're aware, the Prime Minister is addressing the UN General Assembly annual session tonight. And I think from the platform of the United Nations, this is going to be a very significant statement by the Prime Minister. He is going to talk about a number of regional and global issues of common concern. He will present Pakistan's point of view. Climate change, I can say, and COVID-19 are among those challenges. He is also going to talk about corruption issues, illicit financial flows. And as you know, he's been talking about Islamophobia a lot, and this is an issue which has aggravated globally and especially in our neighborhood. So he's going to focus on that. Apart from that, Afghanistan, as you can anticipate, is a hot topic. He is going to present Pakistan's point of view on the situation and the developments in Afghanistan, Pakistan's positive and key role in the recent developments. And last but not the least, and I think this is going to be the major focus of the Prime Minister's speech, is the Jammu and Kashmir dispute and India-Pakistan situation. So he's going to highlight in particular the human rights violations by the Indian occupation forces in IIOJK, and I think this is something that we have been highlighting, especially there was a dossier on Indian human rights violations in Kashmir that was released earlier this month. So he's going to pay a lot of attention on what's happening in Kashmir and what the international community should do in order to, bring an end to these human rights violations in Kashmir. And obviously is going to refer to the Security Council resolutions and our expectations from the UN and the international community to play their role in, taking the Jammu and Kashmir dispute towards some kind of a settlement.
All right. Asim Saab, one more question, and that is regarding the Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi, his visit to the USA, the current development and the ongoing meetings on the sidelines of the UNGA, sir.
Yeah, as you know, the Foreign Minister has had a very busy agenda. He has attended several meetings on the sidelines of the UNGA. He has met a number of his counterparts. More significantly, yesterday he participated in the OIC contact group on Jammu and Kashmir. I think this meeting was very important in the sense that a very detailed and comprehensive outcome of this meeting was a reiteration of OIC's support for Pakistan's point of view on Jammu and Kashmir. And basically, I think the meetings, the interactions that he has had so far, they've laid the groundwork for the Prime Minister's statement of tonight. The Foreign Minister also had the opportunity to brief many of his counterparts and the UN leadership on the situation in Afghanistan, how Pakistan is perceiving the developments there, and how we are working with the regional countries and other partners through very active diplomacy, I must say, in recent weeks, as you have seen, in forging some kind of a consensus on the best way forward on Afghanistan.
Thank you so much, Asim Saab. Pleasure. It was all ours to talk to you and, in fact, get the idea of what's happening in UNGA and about the speech of the Prime Minister. Coming to you now, Zahir Shah Saab, obviously you have heard what the spokesperson just said. It isn't only about the Kashmir issue or Afghan issue or COVID or perhaps Islamophobia and other issues like environment, but perhaps it is going to be more focused this time because of the latest dossier, as earlier mentioned by General Saab, that has been presented. So I think in the limelight of that particular dossier, which we will present and we have already presented to a few, that is going to be some sort of a strength given to the Kashmir issue, perhaps in the particular regard of human rights, women or children or elderly or otherwise, because the narrative of the Indians which they have been trying to sell for the last so many years, now I think the world is seeing it from a different perspective. They do understand that it's an illegal occupation by the Indian forces in the IIJ. But having said that, again, as we all know, that India enjoys a lot of support from the Western world, and in fact, from certain Muslim countries as well, as far as Kashmir is concerned. Let's start off from there. Janab, Zahir Shah Saab.
What I believe, I think we should see this all, what the Prime Minister say. Obviously, COVID is very important. Islamophobia was an important issue we discussed last time. And again, the different perspective earlier discussed by General Saab. But I believe that the virus Kashmir point which the Prime Minister would like to take up. And I think they are now connected. The development in Afghanistan, we should not take it in isolation because it has much impact on the issue. The Indian propaganda soon after the Kabul by Taliban, we have seen a lot of social media.
Zahir Shah Saab, I'm so sorry to cut you here, but unfortunately your voice is breaking up and we can't in fact gather what you're talking about. I'll just request my production team to in fact get back to you. Either on the telephone if it's clear. But coming to you, General Saab, now, as we heard what the spokesperson of the Foreign Ministry said, I think, yes, the speech of the Prime Minister is going to be very important, but the current meetings of the Foreign Minister with his counterparts, and especially the one which he mentioned was about the OIC contact group. So your take on that particular point?
Naturally, these are important, but I haven't seen any big development as far as the orientation of OIC is concerned. And we have heard, the Saudi foreign minister while he was in India, and then they also had a meeting there. So far, whosoever has spoken, it was only, I think, Erdogan from Turkey who did mention Kashmir and supported our point of view. Otherwise, we have seen that even Iran, that earlier had always mentioned Kashmir, this time also they also refrained from that. As far as our own Prime Minister's speech is concerned, I think not only the topics are important, the mannerism and the tenor, the way he expresses himself, because he speaks from his heart. And at times, it seems that probably he's slightly transgressing the norms of diplomacy, but then it has its effect. So that also has to be seen. Not only what he's going to say, but the manner he will be adopting and the words that he will be selecting. you must have noticed that that absolutely not was was under discussion for a very long time, and
Yes.
even today people think that there are certain reactions. So at international levels, even these things are very important. Your gestures, your selection of words, your orientation, your attitude. So let us hope we have a well clued up prime minister. He speaks from the heart, all right, but normally he's not very loose in his talk, and we hope it will not happen again. So all the topics which is likely to cover, we have nearly covered. Probably he will also lay emphasis on the Islamophobia once again, because actually this the world vis-a-vis Afghanistan partially is also because of Islamophobia. Just because they say that they will bring Sharia, people don't like them, whereas actually it is all up to them whatever system they want in their own country, and also demanding from them women minister, whereas there are more than 100 countries they do not have women as their in their ministries, heading the
Absolutely.
ministries, and nobody asks them. And similarly, once they talk of inclusivity, there's a strange concept of inclusivity, that all those who are politically against you, militarily against you, now they expect them to be a part of the government. That is not possible. Of course, if inclusivity means that people from all ethnic groups, people from all sectarian groups, they
All
should
walks
be
of
inducted,
life.
that all walks of that they've already done, and they'll be doing it. You see, there are 34 provinces of Afghanistan, and we do not yet know the names of the governors which are going to be appointed as far as the 34 provinces are concerned. So there can be a lot of inclusivity if the Hazara area is governed by a Hazara governor, and Tajik area is governed by a Tajik, which is likely because they would like to have popular people. So I think there is a lot that can be said, because Afghanistan is not being represented. The old government is being represented, so naturally they won't have anything to say, because their leaders are no more there in Afghanistan. And unfortunately, the present Afghan government has not been given the representation, because the countries have not so far recognized them. So I think if we really want, he is going to emphasize on this thing, that if you really want to listen to them, and if you want to talk to them, and if you want to impress them to do something, you need to engage them. And the best engagement for the time being is to recognize them. And then, because only then they will get all their seats, that, they'll send their envoys and ambassadors and everywhere. So I think this will be one point which probably we will see some emphasis on this. So as I said, all said and done, all these, topics will be covered, but it will be very important what words he will use, what to which topic he will give more time, and how he expresses himself. That has to also to be seen.
Jalsab, one more important point, and I want your opinion on that, and that is about the legitimacy of the Taliban regime, or you may call it government, because government is when it is accepted generally. Do you think this platform of UNGA, this particular session 76, is very important? The entire globe is talking about Afghanistan. You pick up any television channel and the lead story, or if not the lead, the major story would be about Afghanistan. So primarily you believe that, sir, this particular forum can provide some sort of a legitimacy to the current Afghan Taliban government and the acceptability level, sir?
I think the final legitimacy may not come as an outcome of this, all these deliberations, but the way can be paved for that. The way people will be talking about Afghanistan, that can make it more clear whether, which are the countries which are likely to get closer to them, what the Chinese say, what the Russians say. So all these things have to be collected, and probably any proper legitimacy, any event, any announcement, that probably will not happen at this forum, but that can happen right after this forum. I think all these deliberations which are going on the sidelines and all that will enable the foreign minister to give a report to the prime minister, that what can be done, which countries are ready to go along with us. So you can say that it will pave the way for what you are saying, but probably no firm announcement can be made at that forum for the time being.
All right. All right. Now, as earlier mentioned by Jal Saab, that because that worries me. In fact, that worries a lot of Pakistanis. that there was a time when we used to hear a lot regarding Kashmir from Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the Gulf countries. Turkey has always been very vocal, and even now, if you listen to Mr. Erdogan, the way he said it, he meant it. But sir, nothing from Iran. Again, we understand that 1/3 of the Iranian oil is bought by the Indians, the kind of investments they have there in Iran, because they were primarily looking to sort of encircle Pakistan. But unfortunately, this has not happened. And then the Chinese commitment of $400 billion, and Pakistan played a very important role in that also. But sir, do you think this Kashmir cause, which was a national cause, was a Muslim cause, perhaps the atrocities were against 100% Muslims? We used to hear a lot from the Iranians. No more. Saudis, no more. This particular, kind of a switch from one ideology to another is pretty worrisome. But having said that, it doesn't, it worries me, but it's not something exceptional which we never expected. Because when the Indians have the kind of engagement with the Gulf countries, as far as economy is concerned, as far as trade and bilateral trade is concerned, whether it's even Qatar or Kuwait or Bahrain or Saudi Arabia, UAE or Oman perhaps, it is very, very obvious that the tilt is towards the Indians, and the kind of ideology they used to pursue earlier, that is getting eroded somehow.
I think this very important trend that you have noticed needs to be understood and deconstructed in the context of global politics. I think there is a gradual shaping of a new world order, and while you would recall that Iran and Pakistan were very close during the Shah of Iran, but we often lose sight of the fact that we were both US allies. That was perhaps the reason. And after the Islamic Revolution in '79, US was considered the great Saturn by the new Iranian leadership. So obviously this affects, and that is why when we talk about Turkey, after China, it is an objective reality that we have the closest and most important relationship with Turkey. Particularly, Turkey is providing support on 3 critical issues: Kashmir, FATF, and Pakistan's nuclear suppliers group membership. Besides China, it is only Turkey which is consistently supporting us on these 3 critical issues. There is no other country. There are voices showing concern. I was very closely listening to the Saudi foreign minister's interview to India Today 2 days ago, when he was visiting New Delhi, and he was asked about the role of Saudi Arabia in the OIC contact group on Kashmir, and he was very careful in saying that it is between India and Pakistan to resolve among themselves, and we expect them to resolve it among themselves.
Diplomatic statement.
Yes, but he obviously stopped short of showing concern about the human rights tragedy that the Muslim majority state of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is undergoing, and that was unfortunate. But that is a reality which I think is perhaps can be explained in 2 contexts: geoeconomics and geopolitics. I think there is, let me as a scholar frankly tell you, there is a nudge from Washington to most of the Arab countries to close ranks with New Delhi, even in geoeconomics as well. And General Lodi and myself frequently discuss this, that both geopolitics, geoeconomics and geostrategy have an interplay. They are all synergized in statecraft. So I think the US is nudging the Arab world in 2 directions. One, to encourage it to reduce its tensions with Israel, and number 2, to improve its economic relations with India. Right now, India is the 3rd largest trading partner with Saudi Arabia, and this process is going to grow. Now, that is exactly why we see a Eurasian continental approach emerging, in which I foresee a gradual emergence of a closer geoeconomic, geopolitical and geostrategic alignment between China, between Russia, between Pakistan, hopefully Central Asian countries and Turkey as well. I think Iran needs has yet to settle down after the arrival of the new, more conservative political leadership. Because it needs to chart its own geopolitical course, because it cannot be against the Arab world, against the US, and also against China, Pakistan and Russia at the same time. It needs to align itself for its own national interest. I hope, despite the role of spoilers, despite the influence of New Delhi, I am hopeful that the Iranian leadership will see the wisdom, because
most likely Mr. Raisi, who is the president,
and not
will
just
be the supreme leader.
And not just that, we have a common interest, because Daesh, the emergence of Daesh poses a common challenge to Iran and Pakistan, and that is a common interest, because we both want to deny this region from becoming a victim of civil war again, and that is why they should review their support towards the elements who are challenging the new political realities in Kabul from Panjshir. And because the common interest is stability of Afghanistan, the common interest is geoeconomics, the common interest is the economic well-being of both our nations.
All right. Now, I hope you can hear me clearly, and I hope I will be able to hear you clearly. Zahir Shah Saab?
Faisal, I can hear you properly, yes.
Perfectly fine, sir. Now you're very, very clear. Now, first of all, since I'm so sorry that we couldn't give you that much time because of there was this audio problem.
No problem.
But now you're there. So I want your take on the current development as far as Afghanistan is concerned, or Kashmir is concerned, and the kind of approach Pakistan has to adopt and has already adopted in the UNGA. Now, your take on that, sir, since we spoke at length about the
Faisal, as earlier I was mentioning, I think we should be looking at Afghanistan and Kashmir not in isolation. I think it's now a very serious issue, because Pakistan would be looking towards a lot of changes which are going on in Afghanistan, and it's very important. And now the primary concern always, which had been the western border, which was very much volatile because of the Indian influence in Afghanistan. Now we are having a friendly government in Kabul, so Pakistan would be relieved. At least its western borders will remain same. Obviously, whatever is going on the Indian borders, the Kashmir issue is likely to be heated up by the Indians, as we have seen a lot of misadventures which were on the social media, and the Indian media was also mispropagating against Pakistan's presence in Panjshir Valley. So obviously Pakistan would be, the Prime Minister is likely to take up this issue, because Pakistan, Iran and the neighboring countries, even China, they don't need destabilize Afghanistan. Pakistan would have a couple of interests which I would like you to mention. First of all, they would need that there is less Indian influence, less Indian operation inside Afghanistan, which they had been doing during the Ghani and Karzai governments. The Taliban have also, given them a nod that yes, this time the Indians won't have much influence. The second thing, the lost trade, which Pakistan have had been losing during Ghani and Karzai's government, the triangle between India, Afghanistan and Iran, it was very important, because the one transit trade, which was likely to about 2.5 to 5 billion, it's a rough estimate. It has gone from the Pakistani ports to Bandar Abbas and Chabahar. And as we know, India has pumped in a lot of money, about almost $500 billion to develop Chabahar. So it was indirectly entering inside Afghanistan from using Iranian ports. So that is very important now, how the Kabul government is to take up. Then China is also, they have openly discussed with the Ghani brother in their July 28th meeting that EIM, which is threatening the Uyghur provinces of China, Kabul has assured them that they would be taking action against them. Then ISIS is very important, because in central Afghanistan we have seen in Paktia, Khost, Nuristan and the bordering province near Pakistan, there is existence of ISIS, and that is a serious threat not only to the Iranians but also the Central Asian states. During the Prime Minister's visit, I think some of our sources are saying that they have also taken up the issue, the Russian president especially. He was very much interested that ISIS should be curtailed. So these are different issues which are likely to be now taken into account. And then obviously India would be trying to now heat up things in the Kashmir. They would be targeting the civilians. They would be again resorting to human rights violations. So that is also important. So we have to collectively look into all these developments which are going on in this region. And then this bloc, the new bloc, which like the Central Asians, Turkey, China and Pakistan. What I believe, I think Pakistan had gone out of the US influence, and this is a reason why the US administration is feeling so much disturbed about. What we see now, the Prime Minister's address would be focusing on a lot of these issues. The US again has ditched Afghanistan, we could say. Now it's time that perhaps they would be supporting the Kabul government. Faisal, important thing is that what they had been deciding in Doha, what was the peace negotiations which were going on before that takeover of the Kabul. It was not so immediate and not so abrupt, but it was all planned. That has been decided between the U.S. administration and the Taliban office in Doha, that how they are going to take over. But the only turning point was Ghani's departure from the Kabul and his running away from the country. So now all these things we have to take into account, that the world community should now focus on the development of Afghanistan. They should be realistic enough that this time, if again the US ditched Afghanistan and left it alone, then the ISIS threat is there. Obviously, the warlord is there. The Indian factors would be again operating, and most importantly for Pakistan, what we have seen like the Kulbhushan Yadav's episode, Balochistan, which remained volatile during the last 2 decades of Ghani and Karzai because of the NDS, Ra and the Afghan, those Afghan groups who had been opposed to Pakistan. So importantly, Pakistan is very important now, not only for the world, but even the US, and they should realize it.
No, that is important, but one more quick comment that I want from you. Do you think that in the future, the relationship between Pakistan and Iran is very important? Because let's assume that the Taliban regime or the government is accepted by the Western world also. The funds are released, things get slightly better, but a lot more needs to be done in Afghanistan. Having said that, if the Afghan soil is not allowed to be used by any adversary, for example India, do you think they will have an alternative in the form of Iran? And if so, how damaging that would be?
Well, Faisal, we should be very realistic enough. We had not been, General Saab is here, and a lot of those policy analysts, they had been discussing, defense analysts have been discussing. This militancy thing is not only, we can say it's because of radicalization. If you go back, how the CIA radicalized this entire region, and Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the central, most of these Middle Eastern countries, they have pumped in a lot of money to those radical elements. And obviously the reason was that they wanted to keep those elements inside Pakistan and Afghanistan. Even Iran is still feeling certain. Iran had been supporting Taliban. Mullah Mansour, the former Taliban chief who was killed in a drone strike, actually he was returning from from Iran when he was killed on the Balochistan border. So this is an important issue. Iran would have to be now very much realistic. It should not be using Afghanistan again as a battleground, as a proxy battleground against Pakistan, because Iran do have interests. It wanted to safeguard the Hazara community. Yes, it's obvious. We all would say that all ethnicities should have a representation in overall national government in Afghanistan. So Iran's interests are those. Iran also would like to pump in a lot of its products and even the oil products to Afghanistan. So it would be looking towards the Central Asian states, going through these volatile regions, which it could not do in the last more than 2 decades. So this is very important. But if Iran again plays the role of a transit for the international elements at time when there were also reports that perhaps Taftan border was the main border which was used mostly by the foreign militants like Chechens, Uzbeks, and other Central Asian militants to come into Pakistan and then fight in Afghanistan. So these are all issues which our policy makers have to discuss with Iran.
Faisal,
even
you have
Saudi
time for
Arabia
one
should
sentence.
be taken on board that this thing
All
should
right.
not happen, because everyone is demanding, Faisal, the last point, everyone is demanding a lot from Pakistan. But what Pakistan should demand, it should be realistically taking up all these issues which are the primary source of concern for Pakistan's own security and stability.
All right. Jain Saab, you wanted to add something? Last 30 seconds, please.
I just wanted to say one last sentence, that Prime Minister may surprise all of us by taking up one issue, and that is the influence of international relations in the field of sports. And he might, allude to this cricket thing that has happened, because this is very sad that now international relations and politics, it is encroaching the area of sports also. I think maybe he may give a
Jain
reference on
Saab,
that also.
this is a part of the fifth generation warfare. You know, it has so many angles attached to it, but it's a very interesting concept. Jain Saab, thank you so much for your comments and for your participation in the program, sir. Zahir Saab, it was a pleasure having you, sir. Inshallah, we'll keep on talking to you in the future programs as well. And thank you so much, Ali, for your presence. And that's all we have for this week. I'll see you on Monday. Till then, you take good care. Have a great weekend. Khuda Hafiz.